Y'all, I don't even know what to say. Welcome to the Rantin review, and we are reviewing today probably something that many of you guys who are probably watching this channel, and myself included, have been waiting for over 2 years. AEW Dynamite from this past week. Big surprises. Before we get to that though, of course, as always, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, all them things to help the YouTube algorithm show this video to other people. And it's actually working if you hadn't noticed. That stuff does work. Helps it show it to other people who may be interested in this video. I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys for all the support. Very quickly, we're just going to jump right to it. Main event match on Dynamite this week featured Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, taking on the team of Neville, or the guy formerly known as Neville, Pac, Phoenix, and Jon Moxley. I will stop doing that in the next video, I promise. So the match was actually a pretty damn good match. It was one of many actually very chaotic, exciting matches on the show that night. Lance Archer and Eddie Kingston had this lumberjack match that was absolutely insane. Britt Baker, its match was absolutely insane. There was a lot of matches actually that were really good on this edition of AEW Dynamite. Again, one of the best. We keep saying this like once a month. Every once a month, they always have an episode that everybody's like, that's the best episode that they've ever had. And that wasn't all, though. At the end of the match, chaos breaks out. Lance Archer comes in. He goes after the Good Brothers. Him and Doc Gallows look like Godzilla and King Kong, I saw somebody say on social media. But there was a guy who came out of the crowd. Had a mask on. Now, we've seen this many times in wrestling. And it's like, hey, who's this guy? Before you could even kind of start working through who this might be, he hits Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley falls down, takes off the mask, unzips the sweaty, and then what do we get? It's frickin' KENTA. That's right. Bullet Club's KENTA, the guy who's challenging Jon Moxley for the U.S. Championship because he holds that coveted beat-up briefcase, was on AEW Dynamite. Now, KENTA teased this last week, and then it didn't happen, so a lot of people were like, oh, okay, they're still just playing with us. We're not getting the New Japan AEW matchup that we've always wanted. It's still not happening. God, okay, well, whatever. Apparently, it's a thing. And probably much like you, I was watching this, and I'm trying to process it as I'm looking at KENTA on my TV screen going, trying to think of the ways that this doesn't mean what I think it means. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, before you jump the gun, wait, maybe this is the KENTA's contract up in New Japan and he's now in AEW. Oh no, he's wearing his New Japan Bullet Club shirt, the Go to Sleep Club shirt, and Kim and Kenny talked, and yeah, not only is KENTA crossed the borders and we finally have a New Japan star showing up on AEW television, but it does mean there is some sort of a working arrangement for right now between New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Elite Wrestling. Now, for those of you who are WWE fans and you don't know anything about this entire other side of the pro wrestling community, I'm sure this doesn't mean anything to you at all. But for that other half of the pro wrestling community, the millions of people between Mexico and the UK and the United States and Japan and other places that are all into these guys, it's a huge, huge deal. Even though I'm not a big fan of his anymore, I will give Jim Cornette credit for this. That a couple years ago when the All Elite guys had the All In event, way before All Elite Wrestling, way before all this, when they were all still back in New Japan and Ring of Honor, and they had that show and sold out Madison Square Garden, Jim Cornette did say something very prophetic, and he said, these guys individually, meaning Ring of Honor, New Japan, etc., they can't beat Vince one-on-one. But all of them together can at least tell Vince to stay the fuck on his side of the road. And I think that's what we're seeing here, because it's not just New Japan and AEW. It's obviously AEW's got a partnership with the NWA. And AEW's got a partnership with AAA. And AEWA's got a partnership with some other Japanese promotions. And now a loose affiliation, at least for the Moxley-KENTA feud. There is a working agreement, apparently, clearly, between New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW. And I think this goes back to that Jericho show that we saw last year, and everybody's like, I don't read too much into it. But yeah, Harold May, the former president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, apparently the optics are there. He probably was one of, probably not the only one, but one of the big stumbling blocks between an AEW New Japan working arrangement. Now that he is gone, we now have, all of a sudden, instantly, it was like, Kazuchika Okada is mentioned like 15 times on AEW Dynamite, where you got Tanahashi showing up with a big New Japan banner in the background. I mean, they've been slowly working this out, I think, since then. And I think it just was going to take time for them to come up with it. And the person that seems to be at the center of this, or at least kayfabe is taking credit for it, is Don Callis. Don Callis on commentary is like, hey, isn't it shocking how these things always happen when we're here? You know, I gotta give it up to Don Callis. I mean, we all know he actually did broker behind the scenes the deal to have, many years ago, to have Chris Jericho come to New Japan Pro Wrestling and face Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom. Then he went and became I think he's executive vice president or whatever of Impact Wrestling, which changed that organization around. And then he brokered this deal, obviously, between AEW and Impact Wrestling. And apparently now, and I don't know if Don Callis was responsible for this, I'm thinking it's probably more Rocky Romero, Tony Khan, a lot of other people behind the scenes, Gato and so on and so forth, obviously the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. But it does appear that New Japan Pro Wrestling is at least letting one of their wrestlers, Kenta, appear on AEW television. They did put it on their Twitter feed. It's on New Japan World on the front page. It's what's going on. Although it wasn't the big announcement that New Japan had today. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But as of right now, that door is open, and Tony Khan said the door is wide open and they're open to all possibility. New Japan did make an announcement today. It wasn't anything about an official partnership between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling specifically, but that was more about their deal with Roku, which actually is a pretty big deal because most smart TVs have Roku. A lot of smart TVs have Roku. So, you know, being exposed to this 65, 70 million people that have Roku in the States and in the UK, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And a lot of people are like, well, it's not on TNT. It's like, yeah, but they went from 0 to having a potential audience of 70 million, which it'll probably be around a couple 100,000. But it is, once again, New Japan Pro Wrestling making a print in the States. And for this coalition that we're seeing now, it is a big deal. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, one advantage I can see is that the advantage that WWE has always had over the pro wrestling companies is that WWE has multiple shows on. There's Raw on Monday, NXT on Wednesday, SmackDown on Friday. They got all the other ancillary shows and stuff all the time. So they're always being pumped out there over and over again. And you're seeing their stars have a lot more exposure. And the company has a lot more exposure. But now having Impact and AEW and New Japan and some other promotions now all tied together, and not only in the States but also internationally down with AAA in Mexico, and obviously with the Japanese women's promotions, and now New Japan over in Japan. AEW and all these companies are building this nice little conglomeration, much like Jim Cornette had mentioned, that can control their era. The one thing that WWE is going to be kind of upset about, I would think, is because of all of these connections that AEW now has with these Japanese promotions, the idea of having an NXT Japan is way farther off now than it was about 6 minutes ago. And this is just the infancy of it. We don't know what's going to happen. And one of the criticisms, and I have personally with AEW, is that they don't have, like, I guess you can consider the All Out or Double or Nothing to be the annual show, but they don't really have their own WrestleMania. These companies together could pull together and make one big major mega show of having a lot of the big top stars from all of these different companies clashing with each other in a big annual event every single year. There's nothing to prevent that at this point. AEW might be heading it up as far as their big major event in the States. When that would be, we don't know. Are they even thinking about that? We don't know. But that's obviously something that if we're thinking about it, Tony Khan, the Bucks, Cody, Kenny Omega, all of those guys are thinking about it as well. Of course, then there's the match combinations that we can imagine now, and specifically between AEW and New Japan. My personal comic favorite would be to see Orange Cassidy against Toru Yano. That is absolutely something I want to see. And of course, some long-standing things. This has been another criticism of AEW and Kenny Omega in AEW, is that a lot of Kenny Omega's story that made people take an interest in him a lot of the people tied to that story are back in Japan. He's got unresolved issues, obviously, with Hiroshi Tanahashi. That's still lingering out there. Kota Ibushi, obviously his partner, and they were the Golden Lovers, who coincidentally both of them are champions of both companies right now. That's still lingering out there, and that was left unresolved with a lot of tears. And of course, we were supposed to have the fifth and probably concluding match between Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada, which the match that put New Japan on the map for many U.S. fans to get them to start watching New Japan back in 2017. The fifth and final match in that series was probably going to happen at Madison Square. In fact, it was going to happen at Madison Square Garden during that big super show that Ring of Honor and New Japan had a couple years ago. That never happened, and now we're going to be able to see that potentially in the future. Then there's the Bullet Club stuff. Now you've got Bullet Club Japan and you got Bullet Club USA, and again, all the little seeds were there. They were seeding this along. Again, it goes back to the Jericho celebration night with Tanahashi showing up. It goes back to Kenny Omega wearing the Bullet Club shirt a couple weeks ago on Impact's pay-per-view. It goes back to they've let us know that it was coming, but didn't flat out say it was coming. They just kind of drip these little crumbs for us to follow and to get excited about and go, does that mean something? Or maybe it doesn't, nothing's happened. Which is the brilliant way of doing this, and that is the thing that I love the most, is that they've done it in a way. Even the Kenta arrival, where he said he was going to do it last week, didn't do it, and we were all like, okay, that's not going to happen. So we all forgot about it. So when he showed up this week, it was like, oh my God, the entire internet broke. And well, half of the wrestling community broke. The other half of the wrestling community was watching NXT, of course. But the half of the wrestling community broke because of this crazy information. And it really is the hottest thing that's going on right now. If you're, brand loyalty bullshit aside, this is huge. And this is something, again, that a lot of fans, not just in the United States, but in other places, have wanted to see ever since AEW started. Go back, go to the roots, bring in these guys. Let's get some cross, and not all at once. Let's kind of, again, smartly, strategically plan these feuds and these dream matches out to have over the next year or so and lead up to something really, really huge. Whether that's Wrestle Kingdom or something else, who knows? But as of right now, the door is wide open. The possibilities are open. And us as pro wrestling fans have a lot to look forward to over the next 12 months. But I want to know what you guys thought about this whole thing. There's so much to unpack, and we'll be unpacking this over the next week or so, because there's going to be more news coming out. They're going to, again, next week on Dynamite, it's Kenny Omega and Kenta, even though Kenta really didn't seem to be too happy with Omega in the post-show little vignette that they shot. But Kenny Omega and Kenta will be taking on Jon Moxley and Lance Archer, four guys who now all kind of synonymous with New Japan as well. Moxley and Lance Archer, they had their stint, they had their feud over there. Kenta became to Bullet Club and had one of the best heel turns in recent history a couple years ago at the G1 final. And Kenny Omega, of course, is one of the two guys that helped put New Japan on the map for a lot of fans in the United States. So it's a huge, huge matchup. I can't wait to see it next week. I'm very excited. I don't know if you guys are excited or not. I know there's some wet blankets out there because there's some people who just think being miserable and negative about things means they're smarter than other people. They're wrong. But don't let the wet blankets get to you. If you're enjoying this, if you're excited as hell as I am of all the potential things that could possibly happen, allow yourself to be excited. If they screw it up, then we can talk about them screwing it up. But if it's right now, I'm looking forward to all of this stuff. But I want to, again, I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, I will see you guys for more news, rumors, and commentary right here on the Rantin' Review. Have a good day.